With WesternUnion.com's 4-star rated mobile app, send money fast virtually anywhere for just about anything. Download the free Western Union mobile app today from iTunes or the Play Store, or visit WesternUnion.com to learn more.
Can you feel it?
Durant for three, bingo! Right down the chute, Kevin Durant.
NBA Lockdown with Bruce Bowen.
Gets it to James. Here's a three for the win. Goal! It is good!
The NBA Lockdown Podcast with Bruce Bowen. Along with three-time NBA champion Bruce Bowen, here's ESPN.com NBA columnist Israel Gutierrez.
Lockdown Podcast with Bruce Bowen. I'm Israel Gutierrez. The NBA playoffs continued with 3-game twos on Tuesday.
I think we just did a great job of staying calm and composed. You know what I mean? Like you said early in the season, we would get rattled and guys try to make plays one-on-one on their own. Tonight we trusted in our offense like we've been doing and just making big shots and getting offensive rebounds. But the main thing is guys stepped up and got defensive stops down the stretch.
That was John Wall after his team took a 2-0 lead over the Chicago Bulls yesterday in Chicago, meaning they're heading home to Washington, D.C. for another couple of games. They could conceivably wrap this up in a sweep. I doubt that's going to happen. I think the Bulls are better than that. I think they're a more proud team than that. But, Bruce, how surprised are you that this team is up 2-0 now with an offense that looks like even the Chicago Bulls can't really stop, at least not in critical times?
Well, I am surprised that they went in and won 2 games, especially how we talked about the Bulls being a veteran ball club and a team that understands the value of possessions in a half court during the course of playoffs, because that's the way they play during the course of the regular season. So surprised, yes, because of the youth and the backcourt of Washington. We stated earlier last week about the importance of Nene being a go-to guy, or I should say somebody that they can depend on in the middle to get buckets. And the first game Bradley Beal didn't have such a great game. He struggled a little bit, but at the same time, it was Nene that really brought it home for them on the road. And then you still get an effective Nene down low on the block, and Bradley Beal showed up big time. I mean, as far as a young guy to be in this position, it's the things that players are always wishing and hoping for, to be in this position at such a young start in their career, but to be able to really handle everything that is going on at that particular moment, the importance of things. And they depend on John Wall and Bradley Beal to really do a lot for them from the outside. But I think that having those veterans like Nene and Trevor Ariza really helps this ball club out, because they've been there. And then off the bench, as you called this a long time ago, with Andre Miller just being a force that doesn't have to necessarily pressure the starting point guard for minutes. John Wall understands that. Andre Miller understands that. And they're just getting everybody playing really good basketball right now. But they seem much older than they are as far as the way that they're handling the success and the way that they're playing on the road in Chicago.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with the positive side for a second before we get to Chicago, because the Wizards, they didn't get a huge game from Gortat last night, 37 minutes, 7 points. What they got is, you mentioned it, that backcourt. And with John Wall giving you 16 and 7, but Bradley Beal was aggressive. He was the guy that was looking for his shot. And, sometimes as a two-guard, I feel like he's a little bit too sort of passive. And the thing is that team where John Wall's offensive game isn't very refined yet, even though he's, improved that jumper, he doesn't really have a lot to go to necessarily, other than just straight drives to the basket and the random, pull-up. With Bradley Beal, he's got a little bit more creativity, can get to the foul line a little better, has the outside shot going, mid-range pull-up, he can hit that too, and he can, he can finish around the basket. He's athletic enough to do so. I just don't always feel he has that sort of two-guard, I'm the go-to guy mentality. And maybe it was because of the scenario they were in yesterday, where it was sort of playing with house money, where they'd already taken one in Chicago. Or maybe it was he wasn't happy the way he shot the ball in Game 1, but he came out really looking for his. And at times there weren't great shots. At times there were some ugly misses. But 9 for 20, 45%, that's not bad. 4 for 7 from 3, that's not bad. And I thought that was a sign to me that the Wizards aren't sort of a one-man operation or a one-trick pony, where they're not just their bigs, dominating or playing well against this Chicago team, it can be the backcourt. It can be the bench on any given night. It can be Webster and Andre Miller filling it up. So I think the Wizards are versatile enough that, and seemingly well coached enough right now that where they can go in different areas to beat Chicago, and I think that's problematic for Chicago.
Yeah, but Izzy, you said something there, the fact that he was aggressive. And playoffs are really how you respond to whatever you do, whether you win or whether you lose. They responded like a team that's won a championship before as far as their aggressiveness coming out last night. They matched the energy of what Chicago was able to do. And what I felt more than anything else was I knew there was going to be a lull for Chicago, but I just didn't know when it was going to happen. And I just felt like Washington, even though they were down at 5 points, they still felt like they were only one shot away. And you saw a couple of situations where John Wall gets an outlet and they go and they get a bucket. And so I'm saying, like, wow, this is a team that's younger. This is a team that's not supposed to be here, but they look so much like the veteran team right now because of the aggressiveness, as you said, of Bradley Beal and John Wall not having a go-to move right now. And that's fine because he's doing so many other things as far as setting others up. But I tell you, that little elbow shot for Nene, that's something that is a pleasure to have when you can count on someone, Izzy, that when they're there in that spot, they're going to make the right move. And it's not just that as far as shooting the jump shot. It's also making postman moves where he'll go down, spin, go with his left hand, or spin and go with his right hand. He has an array of moves down low that also helps keep the pressure on the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, you know what I thought was funny is he it's not really funny. It was just interesting. Joakim Noah just gets Defensive Player of the Year, right, between games 1 and 2. And he took Noah to school a couple times, especially down the stretch. I mean, sure, it was with a step-back jumper a couple of times. It wasn't necessarily a classic big-man move, but he still looked Noah in the face and said, all right, Defensive Player of the Year, take that and take this. And he got a couple of those in. But to me, I think, we've seen Washington play all year long. We've seen some inconsistencies there. It's great that they sort of had the mentality in Game 2, like you said, to get two, as opposed to the way it seems like the Warriors' mentality or the Hawks' mentality was just kind of, hey, we're happy to be here, playing with house money. Even if we lose, we still got home court advantage. The Wizards took this series by the throat last night, and to me, what was most telling in both of these games was Chicago's inability to score. And if you look at that team, okay, DJ Augustine, 25 points on 22 shots with 7 assists. That's a Derrick Rose type of line. Okay, obviously he could be better than that, but that's the night you could expect Derrick Rose give you on any single night. The fact that they got 20 and 12 from Joakim and 22 points from Taj Gibson and still couldn't win, like that tells me something. It tells me that even if Derrick Rose was there, this wouldn't be a team that's ready to score. But more problematic is because if they did have Derrick Rose, he'd clearly be the go-to guy. Who was their go-to guy down the stretch there? Was it Augustine? Because it wasn't necessarily obvious. Was it Joakim? No, because where's he going to go? Are you going to post him up? No, you're pretty much going to face him up, and hope he can make the right pass or maybe drive by his guy. Is it Taj Gibson? I mean, Taj is one of those guys that they say back to the basket is one of the best in the league, but if it was that simple, they would have just thrown it down to Taj Gibson and say, hey, go get us some points, big guy. So I'm watching that game down the stretch and thinking, where are they going to create offense? The Wizards had options. They had Bradley Beal. They had Nene, and then probably a third option would be John Wall trying to create something. What are the Bulls? Their first option is like a giant question mark, hanging over the basketball court because nobody knows. So that's got to be their biggest issue. And we talked about it after Game 1. Tom Thibodeau said the offense has to be better. When do you ever hear him talk about the offense? So the fact that he's talking about it, the fact that you're looking at the second game down the stretch and they couldn't have a go-to player, that's something that's problematic for these Bulls.
Well, Mike Dunleavy, when you have him on the floor, he's not creating a whole lot for you. And even with Snell, these are players that need someone to create for them. And Kirk Heinrich, he's older now. He's not that young guy. So when you talk about the offense, and where they're going to go, Well, it's predicated on guys moving the ball and creating shots that way, the old-fashioned way, kind of a secondary offense. You don't want to just come down and just feature someone and get it that way, because the only one that's involved would be the guy that's being featured, a guy like Carlos Boozer. And, you know, we talked about his empty 20-point game sometimes. That's part of the issue. And then when you have DJ Augustine on the floor, now you have someone that can get into the teeth of the defense to create shots for others. What they've been doing is using Joakim Noah as that person to have the offense go through. He looks to the left, looks to the right, and he might dribble handoff. He might penetrate and try to create a shot for someone else. And Izzy, when you have the Chicago Bulls scoring as they did, that's usually a victory for them. But when they're not defending, and this is where it hurts Joakim Noah as far as being the defensive player of the year, as you said, that Nene realized that and brought it to him. It was more about him having to help on others and then try to recover and still guard his man. Because of the pressure that the two guys in the backcourt for Washington and Bill and Wall present to him, he has to be aware of everything. And so by the time they come off a pick and roll, you have Joakim kind of stringing the pick and roll a little bit, ready to get back to his guy. But by the time they take one more dribble to make Joakim commit, now they swing the ball. And everyone's not on the same page as far as the defensive schemes of what Chicago does. I think that's been the biggest issue. And Washington has figured out something pretty good in the fact that, okay, we're going to attack whoever Joakim is guarding, because we know that once we get him involved in the play, now we can have pass, swing, and shot. Or now we can make him commit, kick it back to the big, and let him knock down the shot.
Right. I mean, you mentioned that old school way of scoring offensively. That's that's the problem in a playoff series. That's why people say you don't win championships without a superstar who can create for you when everything else is going wrong, because sometimes, the team has you schemed well. They have you defended well. They spend practice time all the time working on sets, not working on what's a guy going to do against me one-on-one. It's working on sets. Well, they're prepared for that. So they're prepared for what the Bulls run. You need somebody to create despite that. And you mentioned Mike Dunleavy. That's part of the issue. He only played 27 minutes, and he was 4 of 6, 4 assists, 9 points in those 27 minutes. Like, people think as an offensive threat, he should be on the floor more. You know who played every single minute of this game, which is insane because he had a 60-minute game earlier in the year? Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's career is going to shorten before our eyes. It's going to be one of those, all of a sudden, 2 years from now, he won't be able to jump over a phone book, and it's going to be what happened, and they're going to say 2014 happened because he played every minute of every game. All right, but we move on to the Pacers and the Hawks.
We're together. If that's what it took, for everyone to understand how close this team is, that's what it was. We got each other's back, and that's what it felt like. That's exactly what it felt like.
That was Paul George spewing lies to everyone after the Pacers won 101-85 to even their series at 1 with Atlanta. The reason I say those are lies, let's talk about what he was talking about there. After the third quarter, when he hit a buzzer-beating three, the Pacers celebrated like they won a championship. It was crazy to see from a team that, has got the number 1 seed and has been to a conference finals. But they were celebrating, and everybody was hugging each other, and even Roy Hibbert was smiling, taking a break from pouting. And, you talk about how together they were. Oh, really? Because Adrian Wojnarowski from Yahoo Sports had a story that came out late last night or early this morning, depending on how you see that, basically saying that before Game 1, Lance Stevenson and Evan Turner nearly came to blows and had to be separated. So this whole togetherness ploy that Paul George is trying to pull off, and I love Paul, but, and you got to say all the right things as a teammate, but that's not true. This team is not one that looks together. Bruce, do you think one win can pull them back together, or do you think this is so sort of volatile, you're like on a slippery slope here, where any little negative thing is going to set this team back again?
No, yeah, I think it's any negative thing sets them back again, Izzy. They had a good game. Well, I should say Paul George had a great game. Paul George was the difference in this game, and I'm only going to go to this standpoint. A lot of times when guys get to being concerned about their own game, like Roy Hibbert was, you see him trying to do things that it's just like you're looking at him, you're saying, what? Really, Roy? You're going to try to dunk it from there? Roy, you don't jump that well to dunk it from beyond the paint. So,
you should actually rephrase that and stop that sentence at "you don't jump."
So, what Paul George was able to do is he wasn't worried about his shot per se. He started playing defense. And this is where coaches are constantly trying to get guys to understand that you're not just this individual. We need you to do this, and everything else will fall into place. So Paul George takes on Teague, and he's able to affect Teague's game because now the length, and he's not getting by George, but now George is engaged. He's playing defense before he looks for his shot. And now shots start to fall. It's no coincidence, is he? That's what the game is. You have to be engaged. You have to be doing the things that you're accustomed to doing in order to see the results that you would like to as far as victories. Now, on the other side, if it wasn't for that, if it was not for that, Izzy, no one else was doing it. And so Paul George wanted to be a leader there. He has to set the tone. It starts and finishes with him, as we saw. You can't afford to have him pout. You can deal with Roy Hibbert pouting, but you cannot have Paul George you can't afford to him to pout or not be engaged. Now, it's one game. This is one game that we've seen them play differently in the past, say, 20 games. So now when you go on the road and you're no longer in the environment of what you're accustomed to and you don't have the fan support, how will you respond then? Because that's my biggest concern for them. Not winning at home. You're supposed to win at home. Now, if they can do it on the road with that same type of effort, not just from Paul George, but it's going to start with him. If you get others involved and concerned with what they're supposed to do, then I think we can start talking about, well, maybe they have, figured things out. Maybe they are more together now. But as far as that's concerned, Izzy, I'm not buying that everybody's together with that ball club because you still saw the issues early in the game.
Yeah, I want to get back to Lance Stephenson and Roy Hibbert for a second, but let's stay on Paul George here. I want you to listen to the sound from Roy Hibbert, again, sort of spewing nonsense about Paul George.
Paul was, tired of people talking to him on the other team. I'm not going to name any names, but he got really aggressive after that. So one of those guys woke up a sleeping beast or whatever the saying is. So.
Okay, it's sleeping giant. It's not sleeping beast, but you can change up cliches. That's fine. That's why they're cliches. They're boring. Here's why I say that's nonsense. Paul George, to be honest, effort-wise, has not been a problem. Has not been the problem. And I know you said, was playing defense, and then therefore his shot came along. Look, he's been playing defense this whole time, or at least trying very hard to play defense. The problem has been on the other end. The problem has been him just not making shots that he normally makes. Like, he used to be money on those mid-range jumpers when he's open, and he just hadn't been making those. This is the first time since March 14th that he shot better than 50% from the game, and that's 16 games. And when you've got a go-to offensive player, that's not good enough. It's not nearly good enough. So Paul George has not been – to suggest that you're waking up a sleeping giant there suggests that Paul's not really paying attention to what's happening, that Paul's not trying – to get them out of this slump. He's been trying since it was the slump, since the slump began, because he's a guy that considers himself a leader on this team. He wants to continually prove that he's worthy of all the praise that he's been getting and not necessarily all the negative attention that he's gotten over the last month or two, or when people started noticing that his game was falling off. So I think it's kind of nonsense on Roy Hibbert's part. Let me ask you this though, Bruce. You saw, I'm assuming, Lance Stephenson when he came off the bench and went straight to, the extend. I mean, I don't know what you want to call it. Bench extended. They got the foul line extended, so we'll call it bench extended for Lance Stephenson when he basically stood over there where Larry Bird sits after he got pulled from the game. It looked like he was angry. It looked like he was staying away from his teammates. I heard he got a bad back, and, he probably wants to stand, and, he's got Larry Bird over there, so it's not like he's leaving the team in general. But it looks to me like a guy who's kind of getting tired of people placing the blame on him. And when I say people, I mean his own teammates, because if there's a report that him and Evan Turner are fighting, and you got Roy Hibbert implying that guys are selfish, Lance is probably taking a lot of that stuff personally. Do you read into that much when a guy does something like that?
No, not too much, Izzy, but I will say this, is that Lance is young. And, you know, from what I get from the coaching staff, Popeye Jones and I, we were talking, he said, Bruce, he's a good kid. He's just young. Right. And because of his past mistakes of maybe trying to do too much where he gets in trouble, that's where, you know, those types of things, those statements come about. But I don't have a problem with it, Izzy. It's just and this is where the youth comes into play. Instead of him, say, going straight to the bench, you know, if his back is ache, maybe you say, get the trainer with you and have the trainer come with you over there instead of you just standing away where it looks like you're pouting or you're trying to send a message. This is where it all comes into play, the maturity level. He hasn't been in the league long. He's a kid with amazing talent, and they're going to need his talent, Izzy, if they're trying to get just beyond the Atlanta Hawks. They need him to be special. They need him to be consistent. But is when things go wrong, everything comes about. And that's what we're seeing with the Indiana Pacers because things have been going wrong.
Well, it's interesting. He finished second in Most Improved Player Award, which just came out recently, and Goran Dragic won. Lance finished second. I had him third on my ballot. One of the things that Jeff Van Gundy likes to say is that every championship team needs a little bit of crazy. And Lance is definitely their crazy. He might be more than a little bit. Just curious, you guys won championships. Who was your crazy, Bruce? And by the way, just so you know, if you can't identify the crazy, it was probably you.
No. I think one of the guys in 2003, people would have said was Steven Jackson. And at that time, I don't think Steven was even 22. He was probably 21 maybe. So, and it's different types of crazy, you know. But he would have been the one. I was thinking like, okay, 2005, let's see. Okay, I'm going with Tim. 2007, obviously Manu Ginobili. So, you know, there's our crazies. And there you have it, Izzy.
I'm sorry. In 2005, if you're saying it was Tim, that means you can't identify someone, so that means it was you. But anyway, last thing on the Pacers, because they're pretty intriguing. You know, what I noticed when you look at all these guys sort of not really having an answer, right? And all of a sudden it's everybody saying, oh, well, Paul George, he figured it out. He's the answer. He took the bull by the horn. Well, whatever. They've had a lot of people trying to get them out of this, like I said, whether it be Evan or Lance or Paul or even Roy or David West. I mean, they've had people try. It just so happens that Paul helped them get out of it on this night. My question, though, is throughout this entire situation, where do they go to where they can look at somebody in the eye and say, I know that what this guy is telling me is legitimate and it's going to help me win a championship? Because you can't go to anybody really on the roster, right? I mean, who are you going to go to? David West is your best chance, and David West hasn't won anything. That's
what I was thinking.
Right.
Yeah,
but if you listen to David West, you're listening to a veteran. You're listening to a guy who's a tough guy. He's a veteran, but he's never won a championship. You can't look at the coach and say that. Their best chance is to go to Larry Bird, but then you're just going seemingly too high up the ladder. I think that's what's missing from this team. Even if he hasn't won a championship, you don't look at David West and say, well, he's good enough to win me a championship. And that's why, you know, like with the Heat, for example, before they won one, you could look at Dwayne Wade and say, this guy's won a title. You could look at LeBron James even and say, he's capable of taking a team to a title. I don't know who the Pacers look to within that group.
No, you're absolutely right, Izzy. And unfortunately, whenever things aren't going right, you see the true character of a team. And that's where everything is so pulled apart now. Now it forces everybody to really dissect what's going on within that group. And it is hard for players to buy into things when they have personal agendas, Izzy, when they're more concerned about their play as compared to the play of the team as a whole. And that's the only thing I can go to as far as a team that has not won a championship or have guys on that team that has won championships. I mean, you have some champions there. You have Luis Scola, who won a gold medal, who beat the U.S. and prior to getting to that medal round. And then you have Jan Mahinmi. Jan was on, Dallas's team. He participated. He was a factor in the Dallas game, or I should say Dallas series against the Miami Heat. And also he was with the Spurs. So, I mean, you do have it, but Izzy, it's such a tough thing for guys when they are concerned with self. They're concerned with self. They're not trying to hear anything else anyone else has to say. because they figured it out on their own, or they feel like they need to do other things in order to be recognized. It's not about being recognized now. Everyone there, I mean, financially, you're stable. The starting five is taken care of. There's nobody coming up for contracts. So just play the game and make it better for one another and not just self.
All right. Well, we'll see how that plays out. I mean, the Pacers have a hard time winning in Atlanta historically, so it's not like they've just figured it all out and are going to sweep their way through the rest of this series. But for now, we move north of the border.
People just thought, you know, you can come in Toronto and get a win. We've been through all that, and, you know, it was frustrating seasons, and, you know, we want to everybody know when you play against the Toronto Raptors, you're going to have to fight. You're going to have to bring your game. For us to go through the struggle and start from the bottom and, you know, work our way up and still don't get the respect that we deserve, we understand we still got a long way to go.
That was DeMar DeRozan of the Toronto Raptors, who won 195 to even their series at 1-1 with the Brooklyn Nets. I thought it was interesting. He clearly knows who his fan base is when he said starting from the bottom, because that's Mr. Drake and Mr. Toronto, and he was there. By the way, I don't know if you know this, Bruce, he was there. He had a lint roller with him, which I don't know if you've ever gone to a game and carried a lint roller with you, but that's pretty convenient. Like, it's you know, I feel like he must have somebody that helps him carry around things like lint rollers. But I thought it was a funny note. One of the guys who works for the Around the Horn said it was interesting watching his lint rolling technique. He started from the top because he's a poser, and he didn't really start from the bottom, but that's a whole different conversation. DeMar DeRozan is very fascinating to me because, you know, he's one of those guys we mentioned in the last podcast. He doesn't necessarily shoot a high percentage, but he scores, I think, 7th best in the league in terms of scoring off a jump shot. So you know he's going to take a bunch of jump shots, whether they're going in or not. They didn't go in Game 1. They went in Game 2, and you could tell there was a real pride and a competitiveness and anger in DeMar DeRozan, and you could tell he's really proud of that team, and he wants that franchise to kind of shine, and he wants to get recognized too. You know, they tried to paint him sitting away from the huddle on a timeout as him being, you know, a malcontent or anything else. But he, I don't know if he was in foul trouble or he was just out of the game at that point, but he knew he wasn't going to come back in. He knew he didn't have to be a part of that play. And sometimes I'm going to give a guy a break for doing something like that, especially if you don't have a great reputation of being some sort of malcontent. He was out there. When he came back into the game, though, Bruce, it was a clear focus. It was, I'm going to put this team on my back, and even if it takes me hitting difficult shots, I'm going to win this thing. And he did it, and I think it was a great showing for DeMar DeRozan and meant a lot for that Toronto Raptors team and the franchise to get that win.
No, I agree with you, Izzy, especially him being a go-to guy. It's about how you respond to that loss. And he responded with that loss as far as a guy, first time in the playoffs. Coaches, they usually have to push guys a little bit, Izzy, and that's what you saw a little bit of during the course of this game. It wasn't just him. It was Amir Johnson. You know, with Paul Pierce guarding him, I could tell that there was a more focused effort of them driving the basketball, Izzy. You saw Kyle Lowry. He got in. He didn't score his first bucket until the second half. So, you know, the effort and all the things in the game planning that the coaches have done for them was geared towards, let's put the pressure on them. They cannot guard us, fellas. We're younger, we're strong, we're more athletic. And when they collapse, then we're going to have the wide open shots. I think they did it kind of the opposite way in Game 1. They tried to shoot their way into the game first and foremost instead of establishing some type of tactic as far as driving the ball first and foremost. But, you know, as you talk about DeMar DeRozan as far as a first-time All-Star, we know that he has incredible athletic ability. And this is where, as you saw with Bradley Beal, it's just funny how some of these guys in the first time of being in the big lights of the playoffs, you know, that second game, it really shows you what type of individual you're dealing with. And so with the second game for both players, you saw what? A more aggressive, concentrated effort at the other end. And so that only encourages the development and the confidence for them to continue on as far as late in the game when he's making plays.
Well, just to back up your point about them driving to the basket, the Raptors scored 28 points on drives last night, including 12 points in the fourth quarter on 5 of 6 shooting. In Game 1, they scored 13 points on drives. And even DeMar DeRozan, even though he was still taking jump shots, he was 6 of 13 on jumpers in Game 2 after going 1 of 9 on jumpers in Game 1, but his average distance on those jump shots was shortened. It went from 15.8 feet in Game 1 to 13.1 in Game 2, hence the 30 points compared to the 14 points he scored in Game 1. And so all that happened. You know, they were more aggressive. They were the hungrier team, the more desperate team, and they won despite turning the ball over on 24% of their possessions. But, you know, this is something about the Brooklyn Nets, too. Like, late in the game, they had their opportunities. Paul Pierce was just ice cold. He was 2 of 11 from the field. He had his chances. And to me, I think this is a little bit of sign of age here where you've got the Raptors saying, look, there's Joe Johnson, Paul Pierce, older guys on the floor we can drive past or at least get a shoulder by them to get them off balance, maybe get a better look at a jumper. And then there was this where Paul Pierce said in the paint where the Raptors scored 50 points, Paul Pierce said, our team's not looking too hot down there.
You know, we gave them everything they wanted, 40, 50 points in the paint and 20 offensive rebounds. We were a soft team tonight in the paint.
They were 52 to 30. They were out rebounded, including 19 of those offensive rebounds. He said 20. And, you know, this is a situation where you look at the Nets and you say, okay, age and lack of athleticism could be a problem. Well, when Mason Plumlee's in there, not really a problem. He's young. He's bouncy. You know, Darren Williams still has some life in those legs, but he's a point guard. It's not like he's going to mix it up in there. You know, outside of that, you've got Andre Blatch, young but doesn't play a ton. Kirilenko, you know, versatile but not the best rebounder ever. So I'm wondering if some of these things are going to show up. Like Paul Pierce, let's say 5-6 years ago, isn't missing the shots that he missed down the stretch in this game. He just happened to miss them today because he's older. He's going to be a little bit more inconsistent. So having seen what you saw and knowing what you know about these Nets, are the Raptors, are they clawing their way back into a series where they don't really have much of a shot and Brooklyn's got such a great home court record since January 1st? Or is this a situation where the Raptors are looking at areas where they can attack Brooklyn and really come out of the series as winners?
I think they're looking at areas as far as where they can attack Brooklyn. You know, it's plain and simple. Paul Pierce needs to play better defense. I watched him on some of those plays last night. It's like, come on, Paul. You can give a better effort than that. And, again, it's kind of like the whole deal I said about Paul George. Paul George playing both sides now, getting engaged on the defense leads to easier opportunities on offense. Paul never got engaged on the defensive end, and his offensive game struggled as well. I won't say that 5-6 years ago, you know, he makes those shots if he's not engaged. If he's engaged, Paul will make shots. And you saw the sense of urgency even when he comes down and he gets the and one. But that wasn't their issue. It wasn't about scoring. It was defending. They gave up over 30 points in the fourth quarter to the Raptors yesterday. 36. I mean, come on. That's defense, Izzy. And when you're defending, all the other things will happen as well. It's just like as coaches would say, son, run the floor and get a layup. And I guarantee you your jump shots, they'll start falling when you start running and exerting energy because now you're not thinking about what your woes are. Now you're just playing the game. And that's what you saw yesterday. It was a great play drawn up for Paul. You know, and this is what happens when you run your mouth a lot too, Izzy. This is why they brought me here. This is why they brought me here. And I've never been a fan of that. And I've played with guys who talk a lot. And it's like, hey, when you do that, when you put it out into the atmosphere, you put even more pressure on yourself because you know what you said. It's not about talking. It's about being productive first and foremost. And the Brooklyn Nets, they were not productive on the defensive end at all yesterday. I was watching Andre Blatch. It's just, to me, he looks lazy on the floor a lot, Izzy. It's hard for me to watch him play because I don't see a fire in him. Now, with Mason Plumlee, I see fire and brimstone. But when it comes to Blatch, it's just too cool. I got this. No, baby, give an effort. But defense was the key yesterday.
What color is brimstone? I don't even know. You know what else I thought was interesting? You mentioned defense. You know, the Raptors kind of had Joe Johnson for 2 games now really have his way with the defense, whether it be getting in for the floater, backing guys down, and just hitting a quick short jumper. They had, they're kind of the rail-thin guys, DeMar DeRozan. They got guys that Joe Johnson can really back down and go to work against. They brought in Landry Fields yesterday. Landry Fields played 18 minutes. Landry has, count them, 2 double-figure minute games since December 10th. All right? Wow. So they know they're really digging in there deep and trying to get a different player. And I think what makes sense is because he's 6'7", 2+. He's a little bulkier, can maybe handle Joe Johnson a little better, keep him out of the paint. I mean, Bruce, he's got fresh legs. So I think that was a clever little move there from Dwayne Casey. So I don't know. I think there's a series still to be had here. I know Brooklyn's been great at home, like I said, and, chances are they're going to really be fired up that first game in Brooklyn coming up for Game 3 on Friday, which I will be at, coincidentally. But I think the Raptors got a little something going here. Do you give them much of a chance to come back and win this series?
Izzy, I picked Brooklyn in this series, but I do give them a chance. It's because of their lack of experience. That was the reason why I went with Brooklyn, because of the experience they have as far as Paul Pierce and Darren Williams, Joe Johnson, Kevin Garnett. Those guys, they all have the experience of the playoffs, and that wins out, I think, more times than not. Even if you are less athletic than the other team and you're older than the other team, that experience usually wins out. But it's going to be telling this next game how Toronto responds to their victory in Toronto. How will they protect that? Will they come out with, energy and being in tune to the game plan and not having any slippage? Or will they just say, we got another opportunity next game here to get one. All we want to do was steal one. I don't want to hear that from the Raptors. I want them to come out and play hard.
Well, there's one way they can assure themselves they'll have a chance, and that's to just absolutely crash the boards and dominate the boards the way they did in Game 2. Because Toronto, it looked bleak there for a little bit. It looked like the Nets were going to come back and, look like the veteran team and close out a win. But they got more chances, the Raptors did, and that's what they want to do in Brooklyn, give themselves more chances and let their jump shooters have more opportunities. Well, all 3 games, all 3 series played yesterday, Bruce, ended up in 1-1 ties in that series. Well, the same thing happened tonight with 3 more games. We'll preview all 3 of those after this quick break.
Coming this summer, the 2014 FIFA World Cup from Brazil. Every goal.
The shot, Jonathan scores! The USA leads by 2!
Every save.
Here's Germany up, steal, closer. In the box, the shot is shot.
Every match. Wherever you are this summer, take the FIFA World Cup with you. It's on ESPN Radio and the ESPN Radio app.
Well, it hurts. I mean, because we put ourselves in position to win that game a couple times, I thought. Had a miss late, and they had a tip in, where we get that rebound, things go your way. But, hey, they made the plays that they had to make, and they're up 1-0, and it's a long series. We're going to come out Wednesday night, and, we got to be better. I thought at the start of the game we were anxious and just didn't really hit on all cylinders, and, we got to get better.
That was Kevin McHale, Houston Rockets head coach Kevin McHale, after his team lost to the Trailblazers in Game 1, and the Trailblazers took home court advantage, took a 1-0 series lead against the Rockets. Game 2 tonight in Houston. LaMarcus Aldridge absolutely beasted the Houston Rockets with 46 points and 18 rebounds. Looked like he did at the very beginning of the season, where he was, being talked about for MVP and, bragging every night, the best power forward in the game. He looked a lot like that in Game 1. Now, Game 2, you got James Harden talking about wanting to play better. He said he wasn't really driving and attacking and being aggressive like he needed to be. Bruce, I'm going to go ahead and let you read my mind here, and you tell me what James Harden should really be thinking about.
Defense.
Seriously, like this guy, it's kind of embarrassing to watch, and you and I have talked about it. I love James Harden. I just want to see him, because he's not the most athletic guy, at least look like he's given more effort, right? Because they're going to come in, and they're going to try to pick on him again with Wesley Matthews. And if it's a bunch of people trying to double team, if you have to double team, no offense to Wesley Matthews, if you have to double team Wesley Matthews when you've got a guy who's probably going to be All-NBA first team, that's not good enough.
I I'm with you, Izzy, especially with the fact that you being a go-to guy, you being a star of your team, a leader, you got to play both sides of the ball. You look at what Paul George just did the other night. Now, I know that Paul is a rangy defender. He's longer, and he gets into it. But you have to look at every star in this league, and you see the way that they take the pride of being able to try and stop someone, especially when they're being featured the first 4 plays of the game. So for James Harden, it's not about the offense. I can't stand it when guys sit up and say things like that, Izzy, because that's not the issue. The issue is not, hey, can James Harden score against this ball club? No, we haven't debated that. What we're talking about is the fact that now, because you're not defending, how people have to rotate early or someone has to have your back. That's not it. He has to do a better job of taking on the whole challenge of, man, Wesley Matthews is going at me right now. It's not about what you do on the other end. It's about you getting stops right now, first and foremost. And I guarantee you that will turn into something special for James Harden. We've seen it before, though, and that's part of the reason why I get so animated about it, is that in Oklahoma City, he was guarding Kobe Bryant late in the game. The year where Pau Gasol tips it in, he did a fantastic job against Kobe. Now, I'm not saying he shut Kobe down, but he was engaged. Kobe wasn't just getting to the back. See, now, it makes me go into this, Izzy. You got Kobe Bryant, and now you have Wesley Matthews. Wesley is doing more to you than Kobe did. Or I should say, you put up more of a fight against Kobe, and you're just completely non-engaged with Wesley. So what? He scores, I'll get it on the other end, and that's how I'll shut him down. No, that's not how you shut Wesley Matthews down. You better come to play with Wesley Matthews, because he's made others look bad as well.
And I'll just add this, too. If he's going to score more, like, if you're going to wait for your offense to dictate how hard you play on defense, it might take a while for him to play hard on defense, because when you've got Nicholas Batum on you, I mean, like I said, Harden, again, he's tricky. He's got a veteran kind of old man moves, and he's a little quicker. It's not like he's Paul Pierce out there moving that slow. So he's quick, but he's not the most athletic guy. Nicholas Batum is, to me, defensively the closest thing to Scottie Pippen since Scottie Pippen, and a lot of people compare people to Scottie Pippen and get tired of it. But Nicholas Batum is pretty darn close. I mean, geez, he's 6'9", like probably a 7-foot wingspan, good on his feet, athletic, and block shots. So he better not wait for his offense to get going in order to play hard on defense, because it might not get going. As a matter of fact, he might want to, really put some effort in defensively, create some turnovers, and get some easy baskets, because it's probably going to be the closest thing to easy he's going to get, especially in the half court. So I wanted to ask you, though, LaMarcus Aldridge, can he continue to be this dominant? I'm just going to throw this number at you from game one. His field goals came from post-ups. He was 6 of 11 for 16 points. Jump shots, 5 of 10 for 12 points. Other, not sure what other is. If you're not posting up, you're not shooting jump shots. I don't know, like half-court hook shots, whatever. Other is 6 of 10 for 18 points. That's a lot of variety. That's a situation where if you're trying to stop LaMarcus Aldridge, where do you start? Like, can he be this dominant? Can he be a guy that when this series is over, you look at and he's averaging 38 and 16 for the series?
If they keep Terrence Jones on him, then yes, I think he can be that. And that's not a slight on Terrence Jones, but it just so happens you have a focused individual. He's kind of, it reminds me of how focused Charles Barkley was when he was in Phoenix. There was no denying Charles at that particular moment. Whatever he wanted to do, he was going to do it. Now, am I saying that LaMarcus is compared to Charles Barkley? Absolutely not.
Why not, though? Why not? He's a young power forward who can put up huge numbers.
Because he has to do it for a longer period of time.
Yeah, that's fine. But if you're projecting, I mean, you could if you're projecting, you could say he's
Izzy,
Charles
don't
Barkley
put words in my mouth. I'm not. I'm just not.
Okay. I'm just saying, if you did, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
I understand. I see. I got your seal of approval on that one. But it's more about how focused he is and all the responsibility he has. I think he's really found a different niche right now, Izzy, as far as realizing how much those guys in that locker room are depending on him and how he wants to show them, not through words, but through example. And, you know, it's one of those deals where you see a player that's going through these situations, and you're like, man, he is in a zone. And because he's in that zone, that's why they're where they are. And so the next guy that comes onto the floor, he doesn't want to be the one that doesn't bring the energy or doesn't get him the ball at the right time because he sees what he's doing out there. He wants to come in and add to what LaMarcus is doing. And it's a pleasure to see, especially when you have two teams that are very similar, but it comes down to how the stars may play. It's great to see LaMarcus doing what he's doing right now.
Yeah, funny story here. I heard him talking on Dan Le Batard's show yesterday, and he was being asked, well, you know what, before I get to that, I wanted to compare him a little bit to DeMar DeRozan in that, you know, you could see there's this sort of pride factor going on. There's this, I want to do this not just for me so that I can get some attention, but for my team and my franchise that I've been, you know, a part of for years, get some positive attention and shows that, you know, we're a legitimate threat. And you can get that from him. And I thought early in the year, I don't know if you remember this, Bruce, but I talked about this in regard to LaMarcus, meaning in the context of he finally started getting some of that best, you know, power forward in the league type of attention, that MVP type of attention, that he's not just a nice player, he's a superstar type of attention, and he liked it. And not only did he know he was capable of it for, you know, an extended period of time, but it really fit him and what he wants to do. And, you know, I don't know who wouldn't like that, you know, all that recognition and everything else. So I think he's sort of, the playoffs have sort of reawakened that in him. And the way he started off was indicative of that. But just really quickly, he mentioned, I guess Dan asked him what his sort of welcome to the NBA moment was, because he came, you know, he could have come out of high school. He didn't. He went to college, came into the NBA and was still overwhelmed. And he mentioned one game in particular where he was playing. He got the start. I forget who it was out. I think it was maybe Zach Randolph or something. And he got to start. And Tim Duncan just scored 12 straight points on him, didn't miss a shot. They call a timeout. And he goes to his coach. He goes, hey, coach, he's killing me. What do I do? And the coach at the time, I can't remember the coach. The coach was just like, there's nothing you can do. The guy's a Hall of Famer. You're playing just fine. And he was like, oh, so people are that good at this level. Well, that's almost like what LaMarcus Aldridge is like, because you heard Dwight Howard say after the game, he hit a three. I don't know how he hit it, but he hit a three. And it's just, yeah, he's in that place right now where he can hit incredibly difficult shots, and he's maybe schooling other people. I mean, that's got to be good to hear, right? From yourself, Bruce, the guy who's been around all these superstars, a guy for him to sort of have that recognition and then to sort of make it, you know, his own, where he can dominate a team.
You know, it is, Izzy, because I remember that game, and the thing I remember most was that deer caught in the headlight look that he had as Tim was going to work. But see, this is the deal, though, Izzy. He had that moment, and he didn't just stop working on his game and settle for what he was then. He's continued to evolve as a player. Back then, he was a mid-range jump shooter, and that was it. Now he's going on the block, Izzy. He's setting screens better. He's getting big in the post. I wish he would go over that right shoulder at times, because he loves that going over his left shoulder. But I think that will come in time. As I've spoken with him, he's like, I know I need to do something on that side. But you got to get to a point where you trust it in the games. But the way teams are playing him, he's going to have that as well. But I said all this to say is that he's a hard worker, and he doesn't settle for where he is at that particular moment. Came into the league after a year of college. He is definitely a leader of that ball club, and he shows it every night out there.
Well, listen, if I can score 46 points only leaning on one shoulder or turning over one shoulder, I'm going to turn over that shoulder until it falls off my body. But anyway, we're going to move on to Texas.
We got 2 days, you know, to sit on it and watch the film, make some minor adjustments, and let it all rip in game 2. I mean, that's all you can do in the playoffs. Beat a more desperate team in game 2, and I thought we competed great today. If we do that again in game 2, we should be right there at the end again and see what happens.
That was the unmistakable voice of Dirk Nowitzki, who apparently is going to let it rip, whatever that means, in San Antonio for game 2. Bruce, your Spurs. You know, we talked about how they looked a little shaky at times in that first game, and the Mavs missed an opportunity to really steal one. How do the Spurs come back from that? What's the normal MO for this team when they have a shaky game but still win?
Well, Greg Popovich, after the celebration of his third Coach of the Year award, I'm sure they celebrated by parlaying in the film room. Now, parlaying in the film room means this, Izzy. Yes, they won, but he's going to look at the bench play. He's going to say, you know what, look at here. Look at how we're running our stuff right now. You guys are so anxious to shoot jump shots, they're running you off the three because you shot the three ball so well during the course of the regular season. So what are we going to do? We got to trust our offense. We got to continue to run our sets and get the best shot possible. It's not going to be a home run. We're not going to blow them out in the first quarter or in the second. We have to work at it, and let it take its course. So I think more than anything else, that film session is more or less based at the bench because they didn't get the bench production in that first game. And then to tidy up on the little things. Devin Harris, no shots. Hey, we need to guard him. Patty, you can't go under the pick and roll when he's knocking down shots. So when you have that time, like as the Spurs do, this is where Greg Popovich really focuses on things, not allowing guys to settle for the victory and feel good about themselves because all that's really been done is you've done what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to win the first game at home on your court. So he's not thrilled about it, but he's thrilled about the aspect, I think, of trying to make the necessary adjustments for the San Antonio Spurs to be better in Game 2 as compared to Game 1.
Now, the sad part, I think, for the Mavericks is you're probably going to get a better than 4 for 14 shooting game out of Dirk Nowitzki in this Game 2. You're probably going to get a better than 4 for 14 shooting out of Monte Ellis in this Game 2. Does that mean they're going to get any closer to winning this game? I have a hard time believing that. I just do. Like I said, and like you just explained, the Spurs are going to come out trying to fix all those mistakes, and they're not going to be fooled into thinking, hey, we won a game, let's play the exact same way, even though they got good numbers from their big three, 27 and 7 from Tim, 21, 6 assists from Tony Parker, and 17 points off the bench from Manu Ginobili. And since there's not really that much to really break down in this one, I just wanted to drop this nugget on here. Speaking of Manu Ginobili, who I voted for Sixth Man of the Year, by the way, you should know. So if he wins, you're welcome. Popovich is unimpressed with Manu Ginobili's quick return from childbirth. Bruce, Monday, apparently, Ginobili proudly announced on Twitter that his wife gave birth to the couple's third son, Luka. Ginobili made it to practice that day. Okay, Popovich's response, quote, he went in there this morning, and a half hour later, he was back at practice. Pretty efficient guy. I told him, Manu, you didn't do anything. Your wife is efficient. You're not efficient. You didn't do anything. Classic Pop, bringing down the man who carries the bench for his team. But congratulations to Manu and his wife. But we're moving on to Miami.
They just swarm the ball, particularly in pick and rolls. And you got to be fundamental. You got to make quick decisions. The guy beside you's got to get to a spot, be it a screener or a guy coming over. And when we did that, we had good offensive possessions. When guys were late, then the guy with the ball's in trouble. So they're very unique to play against. Now, when they're like they were tonight and they are active and into the ball, it's difficult to move the ball. But, again, I thought the possessions, when we did what we needed to do, we were able to run good offense. When we didn't, obviously it didn't look good.
That was Bobcats coach Steve Clifford discussing his team's loss after Miami won 99-88 in Game 1. Game 2 tonight again in Miami. Couple injuries to discuss here quickly. One not as critical, where Heat guard Mario Chalmers, he sat out practice yesterday with a right shin contusion. I don't believe his status for tonight's game has been announced yet. And the other one, this is a significant injury. It's Al Jefferson with a plantar fascia injury, and he showed up to shoot around today, still in his walking boot, and he insists he's going to play. I don't know how well he's going to play because in the 10 minutes before he got hurt in Game 1, he had 8 points on 4-4 shooting, and afterward in 25 minutes had 10 points on 5 of 13 shooting. Now, he's not the most, it's not the biggest athlete in the paint. That's not how he gets his points. He gets his points off skill, footwork, and just amazing touch for a big man. With that being said, on the offensive end, let's start with offense, break it down that way. Do you think that Al Jefferson could still have the type of impact where Charlotte feels good about its chances of staying in the game?
No. And because of the plantar fasciitis, he got 2 injections, even during that time, he was still noticeably limping out there. When you're big, you rely so much on pivots and planting of your feet. So if he plants and he doesn't have the strength, or I should say it's the pain that you have to deal with in that injury, I've had it, but it's the pain. And sometimes that pain is so excruciating that you're not able to necessarily plant like you want to. So you tend to kind of, easy go into things. And you can't do that against the Miami Heat. They're too good. So it's more about, hopefully, the adrenaline flowing for him, and he can quickly get past the injury and get past the pain. Because when you are able to get past the pain, now you just start playing again. Now you'll get an efficient individual, but I just don't see that happening with him if he's still in a walking boot right now, because you like to test how much the pain is by not utilizing something that you can't utilize during the course of the game. So for me, it wasn't about the sleeping boot. It was treacherous walking downstairs in the morning, but I would always, work my way into getting into a nice stride, and from there, you just keep it moving.
Right. Okay, well, that kind of answers my other question then, because on the defensive end, if he's going to be in there in the middle, Miami might very well have a field day, whether it's, maybe pulling up just short of him because he's not going to be able to move from underneath the basket, or just going around him. That's going to be probably the more difficult end, right, especially against drivers like Dwayne and LeBron?
No, absolutely. And this is where you're going to put the pressure of some of your wing players like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist and also Henderson playing the wings. That's where it's going to be really hard, because you don't have a healthy Al Jefferson behind you to try and limit, what teams do at the rim. But Mick Roberts is there. This is an opportunity for others to step up, Izzy, and kind of, go in with the mindset that, hey, I'm going to have me a huge game tonight. I know they're worried about Al, and they're probably written us off, but I'm going to have a huge game tonight because I'm coming in with a different mentality. I know that it's necessary for me to play well. So, this is an opportunity for some of those younger guys over there that don't get a lot of time to play and really have an impact on the game.
Well, their best chance to win is if they force a bunch of turnovers by Miami, and in Game 1, Miami turned the ball over just 10% of its offensive possessions, and the 9 turnovers were the third fewest they had all season. So if Miami keeps that up, that's not going to work in their favor. And then there's also, you just got to really work the boards and try to get as many second, third chances as possible. Well, the offensive rebounds in Game 1, Charlotte had 8, Miami had 6. So it didn't really get them that much more. They had 3 more field goal attempts than Miami, but they had 14 less free throw attempts than Miami. So those are 2 areas where they could get around potentially the injury of Al Jefferson and what you would expect to be, lesser production as a result. But if you were going to put it on any other one player, like let's say they don't get a bunch of turnovers and don't get a bunch of offensive boards, which one player on this Charlotte Bobcats team do you think has the ability to really make life miserable for Miami? My 2 best guesses are Kemba Walker, because he can, penetrate the defense and everything else, but he's also a little turnover prone. The other one would be your old buddy Gary Neal, who, look, he's going to take a bunch of shots. If he makes them, you're in trouble. So it's sort of one of those unknown situations. Who would you go with? Probably Kemba, yeah?
Yeah, Kemba is the person I'll go with because of his ability to create shots. He creates such great separation because he's so quick. That step back left, you saw it in the Big East tournament. You saw it in the NCAA tournament. You still see it even in the NBA, and that's a sign of his quickness, is that they know the move that he wants to use, and he's still able to get to it because of his quickness. So I think you'll see him really sometimes a little too far into the defense, which may create a turnover, but it'll create opportunities for others for kickouts as well.
Well, that's where I will be tonight, so we'll see how that one plays out. But that's going to do it for this edition of the NBA Lockdown Podcast on a Wednesday. Thanks for listening. Make sure you check us out tomorrow for a preview edition of Thursday's games. But that's going to do it for this one. For Bruce Bowen, I'm Israel Gutierrez. We will talk to you again tomorrow.
Thanks for listening to the NBA Lockdown. For more great podcasts, visit the Pod Center page at ESPNradio.com.
For his birthday, I want to send my godson to a playoff game. With the 4-star rated Western Union app, I can send him money conveniently from anywhere and make sure it gets there by tip-off. WesternUnion.com is making things so simple nowadays, and right now, they've got a special promotion going on. Download the free Western Union mobile app, and if you're a new customer, you can send money for 0 fee by using the promo code 2014-2014.
One discount per transfer, no cash value, void where prohibited. This offer expires May 18th. Western Union also makes money from currency exchange.